Welcome to Module 2 of Persuasive Speakology. And in this module, we're going to talk about something that may seem on the surface to not be very important, but I can tell you from research and from years of working with people that it is extremely important. And it's really about the inner game that you have when it comes to speaking persuasively. It's about getting your head together. To master anything in life takes research, dedication, and study. Once you obtain that expertise, it's a question of feeling comfortable in your own skin and allowing that expression of yourself to come forward with no negative self-talking impeding your progress. Remember that the opponent within your head is more of an obstacle to your success than the audience is. So prepare yourself well, but when the moment arrives to speak, stay in the moment and act without hesitation and without second guessing yourself. So let's talk about some influence principles. First three are reciprocity, commitment, and consistency, and social proof. And so what these tell us is that if someone does us a favor, we tend to support them in turn. So that's how the law of reciprocity works. It tells us that if somebody does something good for us, we tend to want to return the favor. Think about the last time you got a Christmas card from somebody and you realize that you didn't send one to them. Kind of makes you feel a little yucky. Second is commitment and consistency, which tells us that we have an inherent need to be consistent with our own self-image. And social proof tells us that we're more likely to do things if we can witness others doing the same. And we don't like to miss out when there's a buzz about something. Second set of influence principles are liking, authority, and scarcity. Now, what these principles tell us is that we are predisposed to be influenced or align ourselves with people that we like. As I said when I quoted Tony Robbins, we are more likely to be persuaded by people that we like and people that we want to be like. So think about the difference between someone that you can't stand, maybe a coworker, a relative that you wish you weren't related to, an old friend, somebody that you really just don't have much of a liking for, asking you to do them a favor versus your best friend asking you to do them a favor, right? You're more likely to do the favor for the person that you actually like. Second is that speakers should present themselves as authorities in order to influence others. We talked briefly about the Milgram experiments and about how people are more likely to comply and less likely to resist in the presence of an authority. I actually created a whole course called the Authority Code because it's that important. And then the last principle is scarcity, which tells us that as something becomes less available, we tend to want it more. Diamonds. Diamonds are, quote unquote, a rare type of jewel. Well, I got to tell you, I've been on this planet for 38 years, and I still have not seen a shortage of diamonds anywhere. And so my guess is that some guy many moons ago figured out how this scarcity thing works, and he decided to tell people that diamonds are rare, and it stuck, and people to this day will pay more money for diamonds than they will for other types of jewels because they are perceived to be rare. This not only works with physical items, it works with human beings. Think about how things are when two people meet for the first time in the dating arena. They meet, they go out on a date, they hit it off, they text back and forth, they call each other. When all of a sudden one person suddenly becomes less available, what happens? I mean, this has happened to me, it's happened to the best of us, it's happened to all of us. What happens is you start to desire that person more as they become less available. Persuasion techniques are like a blueprint. Anyone can learn the power and the proper persuasion techniques to influence, persuade, and get others to comply in business and in life. But the measure of how successful you will be in making others remember your message as well as repeat it to others is going to be based on how effective your delivery is. That delivery is largely based on your speaking persona and how effectively you master the following 6 persuasion power levers. Now, this is one of those things that makes Persuasive Speakology different than anything else that I've created, because I've never really talked about these 6 power persuasion levers in one single context. I've talked about them sporadically, but never in one single context, and they are extremely important because these power levers are ultimately going to dictate how successful you are in using persuasion and influence techniques. So, effective speaking requires that you create a persona that will leave your audience with a favorable impression of you, as well as the topic and message you wish to share. So ask yourself these questions for areas in which you can improve. What is your awareness level? This is the first power lever, is your awareness level. In order to be persuasive, you need to establish rapport with others. How in alignment are you with the beliefs, thoughts, and values of your audience? How well do you know their wishes, desires, and perhaps most importantly, their feelings? Listen carefully to others and ask probing questions in order to get the inner core of what others are seeking. Then deliver it to them or wrap up your message in the language and aesthetics needed to connect to your audience's deepest emotions. So awareness is the first power lever. How aware are you of the other person's feelings, thoughts, desires, beliefs, whether it's a single individual or a mass audience of 1 million people? How aware are you of what's going on within them? Second is your authenticity. Now, most people have an internal measurement mechanism for genuineness, or a BS meter. They sense whether someone has their best interest at heart or if they don't. Now, if they feel for any reason that the person isn't authentic, they immediately tune out that message. Be introspective. Do you care about your audience? Do you really want them to be successful? Perhaps even more successful than you are? If you don't feel secure or authentic in what you're offering, you may want to consider offering something else. A product or service you believe in will make your true authentic self shine. Now, a lot of times I see people screw this up because they sway too far to one side. There are 2 sides to this coin. There's the authentic self and there's the persuasive self. So the authentic self is who you are. It's who you are as a human being. It's who you've been for the however many years you've been on this earth. It's the way you think, what you like to eat, what your beliefs are, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself, what your beliefs and opinions are on world matters, etc. That's your authentic self. That's who you are. And then there's the persuasive self. The persuasive self is the fine-tuned version of that authentic self that will most effectively resonate with the audience to accomplish the task at hand. A lot of times people are either way too far on the left, on the authentic side, and they're keeping it too real almost, or they're too far to the other side trying to be too persuasive. And so let me explain what I mean by that. There's a mantra that I see all over social media about keeping it real and being yourself and acting who you are by nature, and I get that. But if you sway too far to the authentic self and it's not conducive to what the persuasive self should be doing, you're not going to persuade people. And so the example that I give all the time is many years ago, I was running a fitness club. I had 50 people working for me. It was a big, huge operation in Midtown Manhattan. And I had a guy come in and he applied for a job as a housekeeper. He came in for an interview. And he showed up to the interview wearing a white t-shirt, a pair of shorts, and sneakers. And when I sat down to talk to this guy, I realized he was a very intelligent guy, very well-spoken, very articulate. We had a lot of the same things in common. And he knew how to do the job. So by all means, he should have gotten the job. But when I asked him why he showed up to the job interview in sneakers and shorts, he said, well, I was so confident in my ability to get the job that I knew that you would see past the way that I was dressed and hired me anyway. And boy, was he wrong. He made a big mistake. He came in too authentic. He came in, and for the sake of being authentic and being who he was, he lacked the tools that he needed to be his persuasive self, to persuade me to hire him. And so I didn't hire him because what I realized is that he doesn't understand certain social norms, or he doesn't understand context, environment, and circumstance, and that when you show up to a job interview, regardless of what kind of a job you're applying for, you should be wearing dress pants and a dress-down shirt, maybe a tie, maybe a suit jacket. Some would say maybe you don't have to go that far. But the point is that he was swayed way too far to the side of authenticity and not to the side of being persuasive. And so what you have to find is that happy medium where you're able to merge who you are by nature, your authentic self, with the best version, the most fine-tuned version of you that will ultimately accomplish the task at hand, which is persuading other people. Next is your authority. Again, authority is super, super important. Of all of the laws of persuasion, I often say that authority is the most powerful because it's the only one that doesn't require you to do anything per se to elicit a response. So with reciprocity, you got to give something to get something. With liking, you have to do things to make people like you. With scarcity, you have to take things away in order for them to want them. But with authority, you're not really doing anything. You're creating an image and a persona of yourself that causes people to comply with you simply from being in your presence. And so if I, for whatever reason, had to abandon every single influence and persuasion law or best practice or principle, and I could only use one, it would be authority. That's how important it is. And so the way that you stand and deliver your message is going to give your audience a feeling of whether you know your subject or you don't. Do you own the stage? Do you use words that are powerful and stir people's emotions? Do you have a commanding presence? Does your voice have a richness and resonance? Do you use gestures and pauses to give your message emphasis? All of these things are important factors in whether your audience perceives that you are an authority on your subject. Next one is your aptitude. So the way that I want you to think about this is your authority is about your perceived knowledge and expertise, but your aptitude is about your actual knowledge and expertise that you have on a particular subject. So no one knows everything about their subject, but it's important to work toward mastery in an area if it's going to be your life's work. That means you work every day to add expertise, credibility, and knowledge in the topics that will make up the core of your message. When you're truly knowledgeable about a particular subject, it shines out like rays from the sun. So again, authority is about your perceived knowledge and expertise, and your aptitude is about your actual expertise and knowledge. And so the example that I give is that you could be the greatest lawyer on the block. You could know everything about case law. You could have graduated from Harvard Law School. But if you can't convince a judge, a jury, or at the very least your clients that you are that good, you will likely fail to the attorney who may be less qualified that can demonstrate that perceived knowledge and expertise. And so what I want you to realize is that perceived knowledge and expertise and actual knowledge and expertise are two very different things, both of which are essential though. Because if you don't have actual knowledge and expertise, but you've cultivated such a high level of authority that people believe that you do, ultimately you're going to turn out to be a fraud, and that's not good either. So you have to have both of them. Next is your adaptive ability. So being an effective speaker is all about flexibility. You need to be attuned to your audience, whether it's one person, a small group of people, or thousands. You'll receive verbal feedback as well as feedback from people's attitudes and body movements. Your success is going to be somewhat dependent on how adaptable you are to their feedback. Can you easily and smoothly shift your presentation to be more in alignment with your audience's feedback? And next is your articulative ability. How masterful are you at articulating your message? Do you have command over the English language? Do you choose your words carefully? Do your words convey action and vitality? Do you make an effort to add new, interesting, specific words to your vocabulary? Can you adapt the vocabulary you're using based on the receptiveness or level of the audience? For example, if you were using and giving a scientific speech, you would prepare it differently for a group of colleagues than you would for a mainstream layperson. So, again, you could have all this knowledge inside of you that you want to get out to the world, but your way of getting it out to the world is largely going to be dependent on your articulative ability. There are many different potential hooks that you can use to start your speaking presentation. The most important thing is to find hooks that you feel comfortable with. If you feel comfortable, then the hook will become a natural part of your speaking persona and not something you just tacked on to get attention. So this is a little trick and a little technique that I like to share with people where, let's just say you were fishing, right? You cast the line out into the water and then you have the bait which is attached to the hook. And the hook ultimately captures the fish and brings them to you. Well, using a hook to communicate your ideas is a very powerful way to get people drawn in just like the fish. So what I want to share with you are 3 different potential hooks. First, you can make an outrageous claim because that ultimately gets people's attention, but then you have to back it up with a story or data that's presented in an interesting, unique way. Second is to tell a story. People remember stories and they have the potential to touch people's emotions, which, as we said, is very important. That's the first part of this entire process. Or show a video that's relevant to the topics at hand. You could also ask some questions to get people thinking and lead them to a hypnotic state. Set up an expectation of what people can expect from your presentation and what the takeaway will be. Show them an interesting object that will pique their curiosity. You could also use a quote or adapt a quote and connect it with the topics in your speech. Begin with, imagine if you could, and connect this with the topics you'll discuss to get your audience to engage their thinking. You can also reference an event, such as an important moment in history that connects to your talk. In addition to all the power levers that you need to create an effective speaking persona, you also need to offer the audience something new and exciting. Novelty grabs interest and attention. Our brains are hardwired to look for something new. It's these new items, something that appears delicious, that makes us curious to know more. Begin with a base of novelty and create a style that's uniquely yours and can be branded as part of your presentation persona. So circling back to what I told you in the earlier module about how we function primarily using the subconscious mind, and then the conscious mind gets engaged every once in a while. So going back to the example that I gave about driving. You're driving on the highway, you're about 2 hours into the trip, you're thinking about what you're going to do when you reach your destination. Let's say you're driving to a casino. You're thinking about whether you're going to play roulette, whether you're going to play blackjack, what time you're going to get there, if the line is going to be long to check in, right? You're thinking about all these different things except the task at hand, which is driving. And then suddenly a deer runs onto the highway and you have to instantly react figure out how far the deer is from you, what direction it's going, and how you need to slow the car down in such a way that you don't hit other cars or crash into the deer. So what's happened here is your subconscious mind was making you work and function on autopilot, and then all of a sudden an event takes place which suddenly activates your conscious mind. Well, that deer that came out onto the highway is the same exact thing and serves the same exact purpose as using novelty when you speak to people. Because when you get in front of a group of people, chances are they're going to be functioning like you on that highway, completely on a subconscious level. You need to bring the deer into the equation to shock them on some level and grab their interest. And so that's exactly how novelty works. It activates that conscious part of the mind where we need people to be in order for them to be truly engaged. People also want knowledge. Your audience is going to crave knowledge just as they would a cool drink in the desert. Even if they only have a very mild interest in the topic you're presenting, if you can teach or present something new that relates to their everyday lives, you'll accomplish your goals, because what you've done is given them a conversational piece. You've given them something that they can remember, that they could potentially bring up in a conversation on a date at a social environment or a get-together and talk about it. People love knowledge, and they love to show other people that they've acquired knowledge. Novelty, again, is super important. Learning something new actually activates the same addictive reward sections of the brain that are active when doing drugs or gambling. Learning new things gives you a buzz that's helpful instead of harmful to your brain. Even data needs a soul. So even statistics and mathematical data, some of the most boring information in the world, can be presented in a novel fashion. TED Talks, I talk about them all the time. You can Google them, you can go on YouTube. They are some of the most highly viewed speeches in the world. Some of these YouTube videos have 5 to 10 million, some of them even more views. And what I love about TED Talks is that each one of them is limited to only 18 minutes. So when you get a chance, Google or YouTube TED Talks. Well, one of the most well-regarded TED speakers is Hans Rosling. He tracks global health in connection to poverty. Now, instead of providing bland statistics to his audience, he provided his information in an animated morphing sequence. While the information was playing on screen, he called out the changes from country to country as if he were broadcasting a sporting event. The audience was intrigued and the information stuck. Why? Because he presented his information in a novel way that caused every person in there to remember exactly what he was talking about.